Joseph Scarbrough here, and this is the other commentary video that I said I was going to do. And this one is a little more personal because this time I'm going to be counting down my personal favorite Steve DeMonster episodes. And that's actually me saying a lot because I'm like some people out there who's such a perfectionist that it's often hard for me to be completely pleased or satisfied with any of my work because I often see the flaws in the final product. But these are a handful of Steve episodes that are particularly near and dear to me for whatever different reasons, be it there's certain technical or artistic achievements, or they were just particularly fun to do. So that's why these are my personal favorites. So we're going to be counting down, and once again, in the spirit of Doug Walker, we're going to be counting down my top 11 because we're going to go one step beyond.
11.
So, gee, I'm glad it's raining. And this one was a first for a lot of things. It was my first time filming almost exclusively in the dark. And it was the first time I did a lip sync video that was specifically produced as a music video, hence the Scar music video title. And it was my first time editing on a new computer with a new version of Movie Maker that I was actually able to work with. So that's a lot of, like I said, a lot of newness right there. And for starters, I mean, just look at this. I am really impressed with how the photography turned out. You know, these little commercial cameras, they just don't record in the dark very well. I mean, even my HD camera that I have now doesn't film in the dark this well. But I mean, look at that. This is almost flawless. And notice these visual effects you see, like we're going to be zooming in on Steve here in a minute, and the dissolves. This was just such a thrill to have a version of Movie Maker that wouldn't crash all the time and that I could actually do things with. Of course, since then I've gotten Adobe Premiere, so it really doesn't even matter now. This is my favorite shot right here. Look at that. I just love seeing Steve in silhouette there with the street lights lightly lighting up the edge of his fur. You can't even see his rods when he sticks his hands out. I really like that. This was actually filmed in a hotel or an extended stay that I was living in temporarily at the time. And again, look at that dissolve. I just love how this turned out. And of course, this is a melancholy song, so it was just seemed like a good time to do it, especially on a rainy night. Again, another dissolve. I just loved how that turned out. Never have been able to before or since film in the dark that well. And here's one of the many Halloween episodes that we did. And this one was actually written by Jordan Zabayan. And he had the idea of having Steve go trick-or-treating as me. And, you know, in all honesty, I'm not too big on putting myself in front of the camera that much. But there was just so much meta humor in this and breaking the fifth wall that I just could not pass this up. It was just such a funny idea that I had to go along with it. And this is actually one of two, or I guess really three episodes that Jordan wrote, and this just was a really, really good one. So as I said, I just couldn't pass it up. And you know, sometimes it's nice to get suggestions from other people from a change, so that way I'm not the one who's, you know, just doing everything and taking all the credit for it. And this particular season is when I started using a lot more sound effects. Well, again, I had a better version of Movie Maker by this time, so I could actually do that sort of thing. And here's the big reveal. And this is actually the music score that I was going to use in that gym episode that I never got to finish. If you recognize it, it's from what was it called? Beach Bungalow, I think is what it was called. It was a game on CartoonNetwork.com way back in the 90s. I somehow got it through a Wayback Machine. Well, I guess to a puppet, a pair of big hairy hands would be really scary. And unfortunately, my big hairy hand got into frame there. And those glasses that he's wearing, those are modified 3D glasses. And as a matter of fact, they were actually temp glasses that I used when I was first building Easter Egg, before I actually made her own custom glasses. He's got the cap and the glasses and a blue shirt, because this is my signature outfit whenever I'm on camera, because I kind of like to be like a live-action cartoon character, wear the same thing all the time. Quirky and eccentric, I know, but it's just how I am. And this is a really short one, so I'm going to have to be quick about this, but I love doing this one because it was such a hoot. Because I saw the video on YouTube from Family Feud, and it was entitled Bethany Baffles Steve, and what it was a contestant named Bethany who's part of some kind of a musical comedy group or whatever, and she was baffling host Steve Harvey, and it just floored me that what were the chances that another video would feature a Steve and a Bethany, and this is their reaction, sort of like Elmo Saves Christmas when Ernie and Bert see that It's a Wonderful Life have characters named Bert and Ernie. I think I got it. And here is one of the Dear Steve videos, and this one came from Marshall Grover, obviously, Shane, and this is why I started this episode with Grover introducing it, my Gun Grover plush, doing my best Grover imitation, which isn't that good because those raspy, gravelly voices are a strain for me. And one of the reasons that I like this one particularly well is because it's one of the more absurd episodes. The humor is very Muppet-esque, and I love the Muppets as much as anyone else out there, but it's never been my intention to be like the Muppets, and I actually have no desire to try to be like the Muppets. I just like to do my own thing with puppetry. I just happen to work in that film and TV style of puppetry that Jim Henson innovated. But what I mean is, like my humor, for example, I like to try to be, just a little more plausible, a little more realistic to make things, make situations seem more believable. But that isn't the case here because, again, the humor is just so broad and just so out there that it just really defies any kind of logic, as we're getting ready to see. And one of my better lip sync examples. Okay, now here we go. Now this is how absurd this is, because look at Steve. He's cut his hands off, and I mean, realistically, I mean, how would he cut his hands off? And even if he did, how is it that he's not bleeding all over the place? He's not in any kind of pain, and how is it that his hands regenerate themselves? But again, this is just how absurd it was, but it was just so fun to do. And it was really the only way I could think to, fulfill Shane's request to have Steve lift a chair over his body, which didn't work out, obviously, as you can see.
This video has been brought to you today by the letters P for physical and T for therapy.
That's honestly one of my favorite jokes from the whole series.
Seven.
And another Dear Steve episode, this one from Aunt Sam Thompson 9. And actually, since this was the first Dear Steve, I guess I'll go into a little background about what it was. And as I said in the previous video, during those days, we really, those of us in this sort of YouTube puppetry clique, I guess you could say. I mean, we were just so close-knit about it that we often expressed interest in sort of like getting involved in each other's videos, if at all possible. So what this was is Dear Steve was like a week-long thing where the episodes were Steve responding to messages sent in to him from viewers and subscribers and friends, asking him a question or requesting him do something. But the catch was, because Steve is such a dumb little kid, that he would misinterpret what it was that he was being asked of. And in this case, Anthony was asking Steve to review the Muppet Christmas special, Letters to Santa. But evidently, Steve was coincidentally entrusted with those letters to Santa that were written by the Muppets, and he was going to mail to Santa on their behalf. So he thinks Anthony was asking about what he thought of their letters personally. This is why he's looking for the letters, forgetting that he mailed them. So as I said, that's an example of how this worked out. Like, there's another Dear Steve episode where Cammie asks Steve she wanted to see him brush his teeth. But instead of brushing his teeth with a toothbrush, he did it with a paintbrush. He actually painted his teeth, and he ended up passing out from lead poisoning because he used lead-based paint.
I'm pretty sure I put it in here somewhere. Wait.
But again, this was the first Dear Steve, and it was a fun little project that I really enjoyed doing, and that's why this is a particular favorite of mine. And especially for what's getting ready to come up here. No, not me. But, oh, that was back before I replaced the bill in my cap because it wasn't the correct size or shape, since it's a reproduction of a World War II original. Not that you care about that, but I just happened to notice that, and it just prompted me to remember that. But yeah, anyway, this is the response letter that Steve apparently got from Santa, and here's why I like this so much.
You will get a fish.
Okay, this was an homage to Kevin L. Williams. He had uploaded the Santa Fish Muley the Mule Christmas video earlier, and it was hilarious. It was the absolute best Muley the Mule video to date, and to this day it still remains my personal favorite, and I just had to do a tribute to that. And might as well lump in one more Dear Steve video in here. This one was from Colby and Friends, which would be Colby and Dumb Dog, as created by Jordan. And this was the first time that we actually collaborated together on an episode. And he has been a frequent collaborator with me since then. And I think this is perhaps the first true crossover that we ever did. I'm trying to remember. I think prior to this, I think I did some voiceover, Steve voiceover for Shane, doing another Fenwick video where he tries to parody the Snow is a Four-Letter Word episode again. Not sure if that really counts as a crossover or not, but this is really kind of the first true crossover we ever did, having two different YouTube puppets together in one video, as we can see Steve and Colby and Dumb Dog having this webcam chat. And again, this was just so fun to do because we really had a blast putting this one together. And believe it or not, this one ended up actually being a follow-up to the previous Dear Steve episode, because in the previous one, Steve was asked to take a picture of Tommy. And what ended up happening was Tommy had pictures of herself hung up in her cage. and he went in there to try to take one of them, and she attacked him for it and threw him out of her cage. And that's why this time around he has Band-Aids all over himself, and he's reluctant to go back in there because they're asking him to pet sit for her. So yeah, this ended up being a follow-up, which was, I think, the first time I ever did anything like that. See, there he is with the Band-Aids. And those two particular Dear Steve episodes were taped the same day. As you can see, the street lights in the background are on, and it's late in the day. The previous one was shot much earlier. So see, he's really, really nervous about this, and for good reason. Yeah, anything involving Tommy was always fun for me. The red filter from the camcorder and slowly zooming in on her, making her seem so evil and demonic because she was not a very nice or friendly bunny. And here we go. Wait for it. Wait for it. I'm going to be honest with you. I almost couldn't contain myself when I was taping this sequence because, in all honesty, even I thought it was just so absurd that she literally ripped Steve to shreds and threw those shreds out of her cage. I almost couldn't contain myself. And this little ending here is an homage to the ending of Stalag 17, a great World War II movie. Oh, and remember what I said in the previous commentary about how Tommy would give the camera the cold shoulder? That's what she does. And see that? See that? See how she was looking over like as if to say, "Are you still here?" Down in the Basement. This one, even though it was a much later episode, it was kind of in the spirit of the earlier episodes in that it was a really spontaneous idea that I just went with. And matter of fact, this one actually had the longest delay between filming and uploading. Because, this was a spooky video, and, I threw in a pumpkin in there, as you're getting ready to see, and so, it felt like it would make a good Halloween episode, so obviously it was uploaded in October, but I filmed it back in March, so that's 7 months before it went to YouTube. I think I held on this particular shot a little too long, but this is one of the reasons I love this episode particularly is the cinematography. The cinematography was really the star of this episode, and it showed because that's what I got comments on, is people liking the different camera angles and shots that I used. And this is why I really love single camera setups, because accidentally got in the shot there. Well, this particular camera, I couldn't see what I was doing, so did everything on blind faith. And okay, you see the pumpkin in the background? I don't know if any of you noticed this, but that in each shot the pumpkin shifts its position to either face the camera or watch Steve while he's not looking. And this GIF pot was sort of a ripoff of Boxy from the Fenwick and Bob Blob videos. Like, Shane just put those paper eyes on a shoebox and bingo, instant character. Home Alone reference here. And that didn't turn out too good right there, Steve crawling under the bed. I had wires attached to his hands, alternating pulling on them to make it look like he's crawling underneath, but one of the wires slipped, and so it looks like he's just gliding underneath.
Oh, yeah, baby!
And here's the year in review episode, and this is, I think, the longest episode I ever did in the series. I think it runs nearly 8 minutes, I think, so I'll have plenty of time to, share some notes about this one. But, yeah. And apparently, transferring tape to DVD gets the safe zone, so you can see a little bit of my head there. And someone commented on the original upload how impolite it was for Steve to dump coffee on me like that. But so anyway, the reason why I did this one, it resurrected an idea that dates back to my PBS days that actually never got to see the light for whatever reason. I don't remember why, but one of my fellow PBS Teamsters, Chris Smith, he had the idea to do a series of like bumpers and news segments for PBS with Steve in a news desk format. But I'm going to interrupt that anecdote just real quickly because of these celebrity deaths here. Because here it is, 2016, and gosh, we've lost so many people already, just like we did in 2008. I mean, gosh, we've lost David Bowie, Prince, Doris Roberts. I mean, Abe Vigoda. We've even lost Abe Vigoda. Abe Vigoda is dead. Can you believe that? I don't. I actually don't believe that. I do not believe he died. I am convinced that he was assassinated. And I bet I know who did it. Frank Stallone. Because we know he hates Russians. He probably found out that Abe Vigoda was a Russian Jew, so he probably had him assassinated for it. Because otherwise nothing could kill Abe Vigoda.
Is that supposed to be fun?
But anyway, getting back to my previous anecdote, as I was saying, we were going to do some news desk bumpers for our local PBS. And again, I forget why that never saw the light of day, but I always kept that idea in my mind. And so that's why I did these monstrosity news episodes, just to kind of put that into perspective to see how it would play out with Steve being like a little news anchor with his tie and his news desk and his cup of coffee and everything. And this was a different episode. Unlike most of the others, this one basically, all I did was tape the intro and the closing, and everything else was just a slideshow with a voiceover. So yeah, that was something different to do. And this one has a lot of topical humor in it, which is probably one of the reasons why at the time it ended up being, I think, one of the more, it had one of the higher view counts of any episode at the time. And oh, look at those gas prices. I remember that day. Those hurricanes were blowing in. People were literally evacuating from the south at the last minute. And so G.W. Bush decided to hike up gas prices to $5 a gallon as a result.
What good is complaining going to do?
Interestingly enough, as of this commentary that I'm recording, our gas prices just now went up above $2 a gallon again for the first time in months. And yet, nobody will give Obama credit for that. So, go figure. And another thing that I liked about this episode, too, as you may have noticed, is there's a lot of self-deprecating humor in it, in that Steve, in just about every topic he discusses, he gets out some sort of a jab on me because, that's just the way I am. I'm sort of known for my, or I was known for my self-deprecating humor, but apparently I kept getting complaints from, those who thought I was putting myself down too much and made myself seem like I'm indulging in a lot of self-pity, which, was never really the case. But, I mean, if people didn't like it, then I'm not going to do it anymore. So, whatever. But, and an interesting thing, too, is, as I said before, Steve has no respect for me. That's why he calls me Joe instead of Joseph, because he's intentionally trying to be a little smart-ass about it. But this ended up, in real life, people started calling me Joe as a result of this, which is why Steve now calls me his boss, because I don't prefer to go by Joe. I prefer to go by Joseph, since that's actually my name. But, I'm not going to be a snob and tell people they can't call me Joe if they want to. It's just that, again, I just don't prefer it. If I'm going to have a nickname, I'd prefer it to be an actual nickname, like Jadar, for example. That's actually one of my nicknames, but I'd rather not my real name be shortened or abbreviated.
Man, what is with that guy in Canada?
And I think I used that same Obama graphic for the 2012 Monstrosity News review.
I don't know about
I think
that guy.
so.
We are in the middle of what some are calling the worst recession in American history since the Depression. The government has been filing out bailouts for several people, including the Banks of America and the auto industry. Looks like just about
In a sense, this was kind of like a New Year's episode because this was uploaded, I think, on New Year's Day, 2009.
Hey Joe, let's
I guess, I don't know. Well, that particular season was mostly holiday episodes anyway, so I guess it would have made sense to go out with a New Year's episode.
Called Letters to Santa. And let me tell you, Joe said it's about time Disney kept a promise about the Muppets. But then again, like he
Well, I think I covered everything with this one. Like I said, it's one of the longer ones. Matter of fact, in the last season, I sort of made it an unwritten rule that there would be a time limit for episodes, and I would kind of try to keep them somewhere between 4 and 7 minutes, just so there would be more consistency in episode lengths. Because back then, they would either be like really, really short, or in a case like this, they would be really, really long. So again, you know, I just try to maintain a little more consistency in the end there with a time limit.
The opinions expressed in this editorial are not necessarily those of Cartoon Network or its affiliates.
3. The Thanksgiving episode. This was a really fun one to do, but first, okay, that train in the background, that was perfect. That was perfect. Because here's Steve hanging around a dumpster, and you just suddenly hear a train. It makes it seem like a hobo scene. And this was actually the 5th take, I think, of this particular shot right here, because when I was taping this episode, there were a couple of neighborhood kids who just happened to be wandering by, and they saw what I was doing, and they got real interested, and they wanted to kind of, you know, participate in it, so I let them. And that first shot there with him in the dumpster, I ended up having to do like 4 or 5 takes of that, because when he would fall out of the dumpster, they would keep laughing, and so that would break the reality of the episode or the shot. So I had to keep reminding them to try to not laugh, even though it is really funny. And it's ironic now because you know, I use a laugh track. And this one had a lot of dispute behind the scenes, because I wanted this to be a mostly silent episode with very little dialogue to sort of make people curious about what Steve is doing. And an example of my offbeat humor there. Look at Steve. He's got an arm in a cast, his neck in a brace, his head is bandaged with a branch still sticking through, and he's got one dead eye. But as I was saying, the dispute was I wanted this to be a mostly silent episode to have people actually wonder, you know, what Steve is doing. Why is he going around outside like this? What is he up to? But my assistant, and we'll say it's the fictional non-existent Mary Sanford, insisted that the dialogue be added to avoid confusion. This one was so much fun to do, because this involved a lot of extensive on-location shooting, and it was one of the more visually interesting episodes because of it. And the funny thing is that even though you believe that he's in these different locations, he's actually, I mean, they were actually just shot around the area. Like this little so-called country road here. This isn't a country road at all. It was just adjacent from the house that I was living in at the time. And interestingly enough, you see that field behind him there? At the end of the field was a hill, and on the hill was an apartment complex, and people were gathering out on their balconies and the staircases and everything, watching us film down there on the road. And this wooded area right here, this was actually the lot behind the property. It doesn't show well on camera, thank goodness, but just behind those bushes was a chain link fence, and on the other side of that fence was businesses and other commercial properties, but you couldn't really see them. And Bethany, oh boy, Kendra D, she was so wonderful. She recorded so many great lines for Bethany in this episode, and a lot of it was to practice, because at the time, Missy Wright, who plays Carla in some of those other videos you've seen, she was going to perform Bethany in the Steve DeMonster and Company TV show that never got off. And so, to maintain some continuity with the voice, Kendra did a number of practice recordings of Bethany, trying to sound as much like Missy as she could. And it was in some of those practice recordings that she actually helped me sort of develop Bethany's personality a little more, such as she came up with Bethany's affinity for bugs and love of playing soccer. And you know, it's just little things like that, little contributions from other people that help shape the characters, not just me. Because like Russ Manning from PBS, it was his idea to make Steve sort of the little pint-sized Casanova wannabe that he is, because there was something potentially funny about him just, you know, just loving women so much, and it just stuck. And again, as I said, around the area, this scene here was filmed at a Pilot gas station that was just at the end of the block from the house I was living at the time. And funnily enough, you can't hear it, but during the shot where he's sitting there or at the phone talking to Bethany, we had a stray alley cat that kind of hung around our building for a while, and that stray cat wandered up and started meowing as he's on the phone. And again, there were people in the parking lot, and they were sitting in their cars watching us film this. It was really interesting. And here's the first ever Easter egg tip of the day. And most of the time the tips of the day were kind of somewhat non sequitur to the actual lesson of the story, if you could call it that.
Out there be sea monsters.
One.
The Twas the Night Before Christmas parody. This is my absolute favorite. You know, I love Christmas, and I just like to try to do really good Christmas episodes, and I think this one, despite its one flaw, which I'm getting ready to get into, despite its one flaw, I just love the way it turned out. And this was just such a fun thing to do. It just has that kind of really cozy, warm, Christmassy feel to it. And of course, Steve's mischievous as ever. So again, as I said, I just really, really loved it. And this was I think the only time that I did two versions of the same episode. There's an alternate version that has no narration, and I ended up using that for the Holiday Hullabaloo compilation special, which, if you can believe it, I don't have the master file to that anymore. I don't know what happened, but the master file for Holiday Hullabaloo got corrupted somehow, so I don't have the master file anymore, and I'm really bummed about that. I remember when I shot Steve sleeping on the couch like this, I actually got a little emotional because I suddenly started to remember the song from Bunny Picnic, Bunny Go High and Go Low, I think it was called, and thinking about Kevin Clash. And this was just after he had to resign from Sesame Street because of his unfortunate scandal. And so I just kind of got a little emotional there, filming Steve sleeping on the couch like that. Yet another reference to the Santa fish. Okay, now here is the imperfection. Invisible Santa. And the reason for that is because I was going to appear dressed as Santa, but Party City had run out of Santa suits in my size, and they weren't going to order anymore because it was too close to Christmas. So that's the only thing from this episode that keeps it from being absolutely perfect. And I forgot to mention, I also love that transition there from night to day.
I wonder if it's because I ate Santa's cookies.
So anyway, as I said, these are my top 11 personal favorite Steve DeMonster episodes. Do you agree with any of my choices? Are there any others that you felt should have been mentioned or at least gotten an honorable mention? Or did I leave any of your favorites out? Either way, just let me know in the comments and share your thoughts. So thanks for listening.